Hello and welcome. My name is John Hobby. Welcome to Moneycards. This is episode 3. We're discussing plastic face cards. And for those of you not familiar, get your decks ready at home, shuffle them, grab the top 2 cards, and that's your hand. We're going to deal a little Texas Hold'em hand right here. Okay? We're going to flop, and maybe there will be something good. Oh no. That is already a pretty interesting board. Again, leave a comment. Tell us what you have. Oh, wow. All right. Well, not, too wet, but still an interesting board. All right. So we're discussing the age-old grocery store. And by the way, I'm sure I'm qualified to work in any of the food service or grocery retail industries. All right. Do you want paper? Because I can say this. Do you want paper or plastic? At least that's the question we've had for decades here in the United States. I'm not sure. I've never been to Tesco's or anything. Okay. So paper or plastic? Well, which one do you prefer? Yeah, roll in, and it's the age-old battle. Paper versus plastic. Blondes versus brunettes. Donald Trump versus Martha Stewart. I have no idea where my brain went with that one. If somebody knows what on earth I'm talking about, leave a comment and let me know, because I'm clueless here. Okay, so plastic cards. Well, what do these bring to the table? Well, let's discuss a little bit of that. For starters, plastics. Okay, and this is not a material science course. I'm not going to go to engineering of it. Maybe a little bit. All right, but like plastic cards, with paper cards, these are, let me grab. Okay, I got some Chicago bridge-sized face cards off here. These were some tourist junk I bought who knows how long ago. When you have 2 cards, like paper cards, you'll remember, like, these are not plastic. Oh my gosh, the worst hand in the history of the universe. But when you look at your cards like this with paper and you let go, the paper cards can have memory. And so when somebody's shuffling the deck, these don't sit flat. You can kind of track that through the deck, and especially here in the Rust Belt in Ohio, it's so humid. Paper just absorbs tons of moisture. They get sticky, and they have that memory. So they're not, well, in engineering terms, materials, they call it elasticity, right? So an elastic reaction is when something is deformed. Let's grab these 2 cards off the top. So when something's deformed and it returns to its original shape, okay? Plastic cards are generally, in my experience, always more flexible and more elastic than paper cards. Paper cards are more, and what's funny, sorry, engineering terms here. What's funny is when you deform something and it doesn't return to its original shape, that's called a plastic deformation, where it's deformed and it stays deformed. Okay, it's funny that the paper cards have a plastic deformation and the plastic cards are more elastic. Anyway, bore you guys with all of that. And they're more flexible. They have a higher coefficient of elasticity, and they shuffle in different ways without wearing out the card. Like, for example, at the beginning of this video, you watched me weave these cards together. That's just what I call it. I don't know if that's the official term, but weaving cards, saves you a lot of time, and it keeps all the cards face down all the time. It doesn't flash them to anybody, not the dealer. It's just a great way to do it. Not that I'm saying riffling, like what I always see in casinos. I always call it the dealer riffle. Not like that's any less effective, at that. I'm just, saying it gives you opportunity to use different methods to shuffle. There is a durability issue as well. Lots of plastic cards. In my experience, plastic cards last longer than paper card decks. Even like the plastic coated, air cushion finish bicycle cards. Okay, plastic cards will last longer generally, unless you set them on fire or shoot them or drill them out or something. So there's always the durability side of it. They feel different and they bring different designs to the table. I think it's because they're you pay a premium for plastic, and so it gives the companies opportunity to bring in some new designs. But Bicycle's been really good recently about bringing out some really interesting paper designs. All right, so that's kind of a quick rundown of some of the logical things about what plastic brings to the table, but realistically, it's up to you guys. Like I said, like I've said before, we buy these Bicycle paper cards by the stack, like 10 at a time, 20 at a time on Amazon. It's just like, we're getting low on cards. We'll order a whole bunch. And then when we're, after we have a rough night with them, we play for 6 hours or something. And we're like, they're starting to wear, pitch them, throw them away. They're cheap enough. Get a new set out. So plastic plastic cards come in what I'm going to break down into 3 categories, okay? First is PVC. These are Copag cards. Let's see if I have any kind of packaging here to show you. That's what their box top looks like. They come with 2 decks. You can, get these for not a lot of money on Amazon, anywhere, okay? Just go look for these, PVC cards, okay? Very reasonable. There's some other decks that are PVC. The Dal Negro deck. This is one of my pal's favorite deck. He wants me to tell all of you that this is his favorite deck, okay? I got you covered there, pal. And this one's also made out of PVC, as you can see right here. Now, I also need to roll in at this point thinking of my friend and my dad in particular. I need to discuss some things that are not going to be covered in this video. Okay, so I'm going to put this in the PVC deck. I'm not going to cover in this video. We're not reviewing, and this is an introductory video. I do not have time to make a full length, or if I discussed everything about all plastic cards in one video, the video would go for hours and hours and hours, right? I mean, it's like a college level course that I could give on all of this stuff. So to pare this down, we're not going to discuss souvenir cards, okay? This is a Win deck, a lovely deck, 100% plastic, limited edition souvenir I bought at the Win in Las Vegas at their little, look at this ace. I always love looking at this ace. It's just such a lovely thing. At their gift shop, right? In the Wynn Casino, not the Encore. They're actually separate hotels, but, on the same property there. I'm not even actually sure if it's considered legally the same property. Anyway, we're not going to discuss souvenir things like that or the Chicago deck for a couple of reasons. Also, this is bridge size. For those of you not familiar with bridge size, let's roll in some chem. These are plastic cards. Bridge-sized cards are narrower than a poker-sized cards. Not sure you're going to be able to see that. My dad loves bridge-sized cards more than anything else in the world. And I hate to be the one saying this, Dad, but size does matter. I can't believe hopefully he doesn't watch this. I'm sure he is. All right, well, let's keep going here. Okay, we're not going to discuss bridge size or the souvenirs. We're just going to plow through some of the most common, accessible cards. And this is purely informative. I will go into depth, and I probably will discuss some of these decks specifically in future episodes here on Moneycards. All right, the other category is what I'm going to call proprietary plastics, okay? Well, we have no idea what on earth is going on with these plastics. They could be anything, okay? Now, a lot of plastics are UV sensitive, meaning that they will degrade in UV light. For example, PVC, I know for a fact, will degrade. It will get really brittle and hard. Needless to say, don't play with these in the sun. Don't, leave these out in the sun. It's not a good idea in general. The Duraflex, not Duraflex. These are the bicycle Duraflex. These are the Fournier. This is the box that they're out of. 2800 Fournier, something like that. Made in Spain, just like the bicycle Prestige set right here. These, I swear, they're cut on the exact same machine because when you look at this edge, they are identically cut, identical. What are the odds? The odds are they're made in the same factory on the same machines. That's, my speculation. But either way, okay, Fournier is owned by Bicycle, by the way. Okay, these are made out of their proprietary plastic. Who knows what on earth could, this might be, made from the tears of Beyonce. Nobody knows, okay? But they're lovely cards, an excellent plastic, and they've proven to be very durable and flexible, but not as flexible as, what an awesome little segue here, not as flexible as the Chem. Chem cards are the most flexible cards I've ever measured. And yes, I did go through and I measured a whole bunch of them. Chem, by far the most flexible, more flexible than any paper card, any bridge size card, except the other chems and any other materials, okay? Lovely, thin, flexible, beautiful, buttery smooth cards. Ooh, okay. Let's see. Chem cards are made out of cellulose acetate. That's the third category. PVC, proprietary, and then cellulose acetate. The Modiano cards, I want to make sure I get this right. I always get all these different cards confused. Modiano, Triste. All right, yeah. So the Modiano cards are also 100% acetate. Beautiful material. Now, I if you ever want to stuff your plunger down a wiki hole, go look up cellulose acetate. It's a wonderful, wonderful research topic. The FDA actually has some information about it for food packing, and it's not a hazard to use as food packing. Don't use these as food packing. They will likely put coatings on here, and the ink, we just, don't eat these are not fit for human consumption. Okay, I'm just going to say that right now. But a lovely material. Cellulose acetate, out of these three, is probably my favorite, just to tell you. Now, let's roll in a couple of other decks, and we will discuss. So that's one part of your decision. You're going to have to decide, am I biased to one of these materials? Because PVC does have some volatility issues. It is considered kind of a low-risk hazard for particularly your lungs. If you worked in a PVC factory and you were exposed to it all day, every day, it would be considered, a risk. I'm not sure if it's a low risk or high risk at that point, but either way, some people avoid PVC. I mean, I know a lady who won't buy PVC curtains, shower curtains, because she feels like they're too volatile. We're going to roll in 8 decks, and this is, we're going to use maybe 9, and we're going to use this kind of as a representation of the market, although I think this covers a huge portion of the market. These are some Cartamundi cards. We're going to start here. These are some Cartamundi cards, and Cartamundi is more famous for their bridge-sized cards, all right? And people will say that they make the best acetate bridge-sized cards, okay? And they do make a lovely card. These have a very smooth, elegant feel to them. Yeah, they did. Let's see if I have the packaging here. They did use, here's an unopened package of Ace Authentic plastic, 100% plastic. Made in the USA. Lovely decks, right? But they go with this biplane Ace theme, which, is okay. And I mean, as far as like shuffling goes, I'm just going to try to do this in midair. They shuffle fine. They're smooth. They're not too slick. They're a reasonable deck, especially if you're interested in plastic. Like, here's a question for the audience, everybody out there. If somebody came to you who used paper cards their whole life, unlike me, they weren't raised on plastic chem cards, and they came to you and said, well, what plastic deck would you recommend for a beginner? Wow, that's a tough question. Bicycle Prestige might be on that list. Copag would be a great one. And Cartamundi, I think, would be right there in that ballpark as an affordable, very usable plastic card that's not too hard to transition into, okay? So let's look at some of the design here, okay? So the backs, are, I wouldn't describe them as super elegant, but they have this nice retro biplane sort of feel to them. Now, you'll notice there's a blue outline here around the face guard. I'm not a huge fan of these blue boxes, but luckily we're spared that because this is the standard size deck and we don't have boxes around the pips, all right? So this is a very playable, usable deck. And one of the nice things about this transitioning from paper cards is paper cards will often have the blue outlines as well printed, right? So it's not shell shock to anybody. It's easy to understand. The pips are easy to read. There's no witchcraft going on there like some of these others. So, we'll discuss that. Let's leave these face up so I can remember which ones I've talked about. Okay, so Cartamundi, this is a great, deck. It wouldn't surprise me to see somebody roll into this video and comment and say, this is their favorite deck, plastic deck. This is what they use all the time. It wouldn't surprise me because it's just a very reasonable thing, okay? Now let's move over here to Gemaco. Gemaco is the same company that own Paulson, or at least under that umbrella. I don't know how it all works, but it's associated with them. Okay, they're listed on the same websites. So this has a really bold feel to it, which is different. I mean, to each their own. I mean, look at the eyes of these guys. Talk about a stare. Wow. I think the Queen also has some big eyes, if I remember right. Lovely design. I like it because they're different. The faces are different. It's just so interesting. There's another killer glare. Those are big black eyes. There's some more. Yeah, wow. Just, very glary kind of cards, but they're bold, okay? Gemaco, 100% plastic, lovely, lovely cards. And I'll hit on these shortly after. Now, design. Now, I was turned on to these by a viewer. They recommended this in the comments, and of course, I looked it up, and I love comments. I take comments pretty seriously, unless they're obviously trolls. Then we just all laugh, at them and then move on. So these cards, they took a great deal of effort to make something different. Now, if you're a pro poker player, like World Series of Poker in 2015, they used the Modiano cards, which we'll discuss in a minute, and they were complaining about the pips, and they were like, just whatever happened to just the normal stuff, you know. And if you're a pro, you know, maybe you're more entitled to something like that. But for me, as a hobbyist, hobbyphilic, that's the name of my YouTube channel and website, you know, I'm looking for things that are different and unique, and this brings something very unique and different. However, I have heard reports that I trust, that there are durability issues with this. Now, we've played maybe 20 hours on this deck right here, and we haven't seen that over such a short period of time. However, I would, you know, they do have a nice texture to them, and I can see that it would wear pretty quickly. So just be sensitive to that. And now I'm going to give some advice here. Another thing about this, as much as I love the pips, I'm still not sure about these faces. They just seem like something's missing, or maybe not proportioned correctly, right? Either way, you know, a very lovely, unique design on the faces themselves, not just on the back. Okay, so I really like these design cards for that reason. You know, now we're talking about design, purely emotional, and it'll be different for everybody. Now we're getting to one of the mainstays here in my life, Chem. Okay, I've played with Chem almost my entire life. Yeah, in college, you know, I moved away from it because that was Dad's, you know, go-to deck. And what does he know? You'll notice that they have a smaller box than, you know, this is the jumbo size here. They have a smaller box than the Gemaco cards right here. Again, very standard pips, easy to read. There's no rocket science here. I like it that they have colored boxes, like this is a really thin black and this is a thin red, as opposed to just blue across the board. I think the blue kind of detracts from it, but some people will love it. You know, it comes down to their personal tastes. So for me, what did I say at the beginning? Blondes versus brunettes. Well, I guess that was paper versus plastic, but this is a deck that really appeals to me on a lot of levels. I might make a whole episode dedicated just to discuss Chem, because it has such an interesting history and an interesting deck. Either way, so Chem brings cellulose acetate, really thin, like I said earlier, I believe the most flexible card I've ever measured. The most flexible. It's just stunning. They're buttery smooth. I love the texture on them too, the finish. It's not just like a matte finish. It's almost like a wood grain finish. It's hard to describe. And then we get to Modiano. Okay, this is what people were complaining about in the World Series of Poker. Look at these rounded top spades. Like, a lot of people like the really sharp spades, right? It's easy to recognize. So, you know, you flip that up, you know, in a dark room, you can easily tell, you know, that that's a sharp point, whereas this in a dark room at the right angle, you know, is that, how rounded is that? How pointy is that? You know, like I said earlier, if you're a pro, you know, yeah, and you know, you're looking for efficiency, yeah, I would go with the pointy. But for hobbyists, you know, in a well-lit room, I like the different pips, and I've said so before earlier. You know, I'm not sure if it was on video, but either way, I like the unique pips, the unique spades. The heart also kind of has that more rounded bottom. A lovely, in my opinion, a lovely cellulose acetate deck. You can see she looks like she's scowling a little bit, but either way, you know, I always love like the little artwork and little subtle things like this, like made in Italy. What a lovely thing, this deck. It shuffles really well. The Modiano are some of my favorite to shuffle. Again, they're not as flexible as Chem, and if you're sensitive to like shuffle fatigue, you know, it's all things to consider. But for me, you know, we play for hours and it's never been a problem. I shuffle these different ways. So Modiano, you know, lovely deck. Okay, now we're going to move into some of the bicycle ones. We're going to have to pick things up here. I'm running out of time. Bicycle Prestige, you know, just bicycle pips, bicycle design, you know, Duraflex material. That would be a good entry. The Fournier is also, I would say, equally good for entry level. You know, lovely. These are lovely decks. I could see this just being a workhorse plastic deck. Frankly, I can't find anything wrong with either of these two decks. It comes down to kind of preference on how things feel and how things look. I'm going to tell you my preferences here. These are the Dal Negro. Roll in the package right here. Made in Italy. This tells you what it is. Freedom X Poker plastic playing cards, blue, new. They're new, so they weren't used, but they are used now. So I need to print a new label out, right? But my friend who's left-handed, he loves these because you can see the indexing right here, you know? So you can hold it with your left hand, and you can tell exactly what you have if you're playing like 5-card stud or something. You know, so it's a lovely, lovely deck. The Dal Negros, I can really understand why people would fall in love with those. Copag, same thing. I'm not a big fan of this blue. As I mentioned earlier, lines, the blue in the face cards just doesn't appeal to me. That's, you know, just kind of my preference. And let me look here. Yep, I'm out of time. How did it go? Man, time flies when we're having fun. All right, so out of these, I'm just going to show you my 4 favorite, okay, in order. Number 1, Chem. I love Chem face cards, okay? This is my number 1 pick. This is a recent thing. I probably would have chosen something different had you asked me 5 years ago what my favorite deck was, okay? But Chem plastic cards have grown on me again. They're buttery smooth, super flexible. They feel great. They look great, easy to read. Just a mainstay staple here in the in the John hobby home. Second, this might be a surprise to some of you, the Gemaco. I like the boldness of them. I like how easy they are to read. They are smooth shuffling. I like the bright, vivid colors. Oh man, I haven't talked about security ink yet, or printing. We'll talk about all this in a future video. We're out of time. So, Gemaco is number 2, followed closely by the Modiano. Sorry, World Series of Poker pros. You know, this is a lovely, lovely deck. I like it that they are slightly different, that they were bold enough to say, hey, you know what? We're going to make something pretty unique. So Modiano is number 3. And finally, what do you think my number 4 would be? I can tell you my friend is screaming, the Dal Negros, they're my number 1. Yes, we know. We've already told the world that. Thank you for that. Definitely the design. You know, we're going to see about durability. It may change in the future, and all this changes. Everybody's taste will change. But the design cards are such, to me, a lovely change of pace. It's just a sigh of relief, like, you know, who cares about tradition? Who cares about copying other people? We're just going to do our own little thing, and I love that about the design cards. Now, I have some wrapping up to do here. It's not quite over yet. Thanks for, it might go over a few minutes here. I try to keep these videos to 20 minutes or less. This is the design packaging for this deck right here. Lovely, lovely deck. The Modiano decks come in stuff like this frequently. 2 decks per one of those. The Chem cards, it just happened to be what's next on my stack over here. It says US Playing Card Company, but like the bridge size ones that my dad loves say Chem on them still. Whether they change that, I hope they don't change that. I love these boxes that say Chem. Just a lovely thing. The Gemaco came in a clear box like this, right? So, I mean, that doesn't really help anybody really decide. Now, the last thing I want to discuss. Now, this is important to plastic cards and a lot of other cards. When we're talking about wear and tear, notice I haven't opened this set right here, this deck. Don't do this. Don't be like me. I have so many decks, all right, of cards, paper cards that we cycle through. And this is my recommendation to everybody. Leave a comment and tell me if you think I'm crazy or something. But my recommendation is to cycle through your decks. Okay, so don't just take one deck and play it and wear it out. I would say open up both of them and play with both of them, or better yet, get 4. So if you like Gemaco, get the 2 decks of Gemaco and get 2 other decks, plastic cards, Duraflex, paper, even paper cards, it doesn't even matter, and then cycle through them. So one week play with this deck, the next week play with this deck, the next week play with a paper deck, the week after that another paper deck. Your cards will last seemingly forever. And then, when you're ready to buy a new deck, lots of times we'll have new designs out. So either way, that's just my 2 cents. That's my recommendation. Take it for what it's worth. Remember, I'm just a hobbyist. My 4 favorite cards. Thank you for watching episode 3, Chem, Gemaco, Modiano, Design.